Now that I'm waiting on Lona, Lona's late. Lona apparently is in the shower and running a little bit behind. Let me tell you now, everybody's talking about revolution, evolution, masturbation, flagellation, regulation, integrations, meditations, United Nations. Congratulations. All we are saying is give peace a chance. Welcome to Walk a Mile in My Shoes. My name is Eric McCoy, and I'm happy, of course, to have my co-host Lona Curry today because he just happens to be an expert on our topic today. Lona, you ready for this?
I'm super ready for this, man. I'm so excited.
All right. So I'm going to walk a mile in the shoes of a transgender. Now, while Lona, of course, has walked hundreds, if not thousands of miles in these shoes, right?
Scabbed up feet, man. Scabbed up feet at this point.
Yes. All right. So for the last 2 decades, anti-LGBTQ politicians have attempted to sow a lot of disinformation about LGBTQ people's rights to score cheap political points with their base. You agree with me on that?
Yes, I absolutely do.
All right. So transgender and non-binary people have been the target of many of these attacks, especially since the 2015 state legislative sessions. Right? And then so-called bathroom bills were a major focus, and politicians, I think, lied about threats to women and girls' safety because they never really materialized.
Right.
Now, the target were arguments about also sports participation and misinformation about affirming healthcare access.
Yes.
But on May 4th, 2016, the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division wrote a letter to Lona's governor at the time, advising Governor McCrory, right, that its law, HB 2, violated civil rights laws, including Title VII, and that the state had until the Monday following that date to abandon the measure or else risk losing federal funding. So the Public Facilities Privacy and Security Act, HB 2. You remember this?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
It took effect on March 23rd, 2016, and this was partially in response to actions by the City Council of Charlotte, which approved a local ordinance protecting transgender people from gender identity discrimination.
Right.
So the city ordinance included language that would allow people to use the bathroom that corresponds to their gender identity. And of course, HB 2 overturned these protections. And as a result, many dubbed it again the bathroom bill.
Yeah.
All right.
These are God shitters.
Yeah. So in 2016, McCrory came to national attention after signing the Public Facilities Privacy and Security Act, HB2, again, the bathroom bill. And among other provisions, HB2 prevented local governing bodies from establishing their own anti-discrimination statutes. So it declared that in government buildings, individuals may use only the restrooms that correspond to the sex on their birth certificates. Currently have to carry them, preventing transgender people who have not altered their birth certificates from using the restroom consistent with their gender identity. Right? The United States Department of Justice, in addition to several private citizens, filed lawsuits against McCrory and the state regarding this HB2. And so over 100 corporations voiced their opposition to this, notably to the elements that limited protections for the LGBTQ individuals. HB2 was partially repealed on March 30th, 2017, after his re-election loss in 2016. Now, of course, he lost to a Democrat. Right?
Roy Cooper.
McCrory lost to Democrat Roy Cooper.
Yes.
Right? State's Attorney General. And in 2022, McCrory ran for the U.S. Senate and lost the Republican primary to U.S. Representative Ted Budd. But just for reference, here is your North Carolina loser.
Yay.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm North Carolina Governor Pat McCrory. In the 50 plus years since I've lived in North Carolina, I've learned that the people of North Carolina love each other and they respect their differences, even when those differences conflict with their beliefs and their values. Time and time again, I've witnessed the people of North Carolina put aside their disagreements and come together to accommodate and work out solutions while still respecting each other's beliefs and values.
Pat McCrory, that's beautiful, man.
I've also witnessed politicians who sadly have exploited differences and divided our people. Instead of living up to the North Carolina tradition of respecting those with whom they disagree, they demonized our state for political gain. And that is not acceptable.
Not acceptable.
Some have called our state an embarrassment.
Who? No way.
The real embarrassment is politicians not publicly respecting each other's positions on complex issues. Unfortunately, that has occurred when legislation was passed recently to protect men, women, and children when they use a public restroom, shower, or locker room. Instead, North Carolina has been the target of a vicious nationwide smear campaign. Disregarding the facts, other politicians from the White House to mayors to state capitals and city council members and even our Attorney General have initiated and promoted conflict to advance their political agenda and tear down our state, even if it means defying the Constitution and their oath of office. You know, obeying the laws of the land and living up to the duties of the office and defending the Constitution is the foundation of North Carolina's government. I am standing right up now up to the President of the United States to prevent federal overreach to take over our North Carolina waters, which I think is in violation of the U.S. Constitution. I've even stood up to the legislative leaders of my own Republican Party when they took powers not delegated to them in the North Carolina Constitution, and our state Supreme Court agreed. This is not about demonizing one group of people. In fact, let's put our differences aside. Let's stop the political rhetoric and, yes, a lot of hypocrisy, and work on solutions that will make this bill better in the future. I'm open to new ideas and solutions. And to the people and businesses of North Carolina, we are a state of inclusiveness, openness, and diversity, and I'm very, very proud of that. I believe in North Carolina, its people, and also our democratic process. And I will not shy away from taking the responsibility to do what it takes to make our state better. These are the values that I learned more than 50 years ago when I first came to North Carolina, and I will continue to uphold those values as your governor of our great state. May God continue to bless you and the people of North Carolina. Thank you very much.
No, thank you.
How'd it work out for you, Pat?
Amen.
Amen. Oh.
Man, that was an amazing guy, man. He's like, he wants to set the differences. He loves everybody. They're all inclusive.
Yep. Very inclusive. Doesn't want to demonize, but
and all
in
the
fact,
people of
we
North
did
Carolina.
right. But in fact, we just pulled this shit out of the air. Oh, what can I do today? Oh, the fucking transgenders in the bathroom. That's where we're going.
It's a good thing to focus on.
That's exactly right.
Has there been a huge problem with that?
No, not until then. Not until he decided to pick that off the tree.
Yeah. Like it's almost like there was a huge problem with it.
I know.
You know?
I know. Like, I still to this day have no earthly idea where that came from, why all of a sudden it was some kind of issue, and who brought this to his attention to say, oh, well, we're out of ideas, man. Some guy in the back said, well, what about the transgenders in the bathroom? We could do that one.
That's exactly, I think, what happened. I mean,
it has to be.
I mean, the LGBTQ in general, not just, you know what I mean? But like it's grabbing. But yeah, the transgender, of course, has been the huge focus since like 2015.
Huge. Yeah. Ever since this came about, it just seems like it's been progressively getting to be this worse attack, this making up of some big issue that is happening that none of the rest of us are really aware of it until now. Now. Yeah. Transgenders are coming out of the woodworks now.
They're freaking everywhere.
Everywhere
I turn, man.
There's one. Yeah. Oh God, they're everywhere.
Okay, so Title VII, right, is the main federal law that prohibits employment discrimination. That's based on race, religion, national origin, color, sex, including gender identity, pregnancy, and sexual orientation. Of course, this means that an employer cannot take an adverse employment action, quote unquote, such as firing, refusing to hire, demoting, refusing to promote somebody against an employee or potential employee based on any of those protected characteristics. And if they do, the employee might have a discrimination claim, make some money, right? Now, I want to show a video real quick that really makes it hard to argue. Now, we learned from the lady from the Westboro Baptist Church that it's not a choice, right?
Exactly.
And so, God put this upon you.
That's right.
And
she said it.
I want to show a video though. This is one that you literally are almost like, okay, there's no way that this person chose this.
At first, Jeremy and Catherine Mathis didn't think much of their son's behavior. Coy took his sister's pink blanket and shunned the car they gave him for Christmas.
We actually have it on video. She opened it, looked at it, and walked off. Like, that's not what I wanted at all.
Later, the Mathises learned their child had gender identity disorder. It's a condition in which someone identifies as the opposite gender.
She started talking about wanting to go to the doctor so that she would be fixed because she wasn't supposed to be a boy, and when were we going to take her to the doctor so that her body could get fixed.
The parents decided to help Coy, now 6, live as a girl, and at school the first grader wanted to use the girls' bathroom, but Coy's elementary school refused to allow the child to use the girls' bathroom. Instead, the district said Coy can use staff bathrooms or the one in the nurse's office.
But the doctor's bathroom's only for sick people, and I'm not sick at all when I go there.
Coy's parents say using anything other than the girls' bathroom could stigmatize their child.
It just sets her up for bullying and harassment, and it's not fair, it's not right, and she needs to have the opportunity to go and use the girls' restroom like all the other girls.
Wednesday, the Mathises filed a complaint with Colorado's Civil Rights Commission. The parents allege the school violates the state's anti-discrimination law. School district officials have declined comment, citing the complaint. Coy, who's a triplet, is now being homeschooled along with siblings while the issue is being litigated.
Wow.
Hmm.
Huh.
Wow. That's awful early to be able to choose, isn't it?
That's seriously. I mean that kind of I think that's a great picture that shows that really throws that argument out the window.
Or absolutely.
I mean, come on.
Absolutely.
Like
Yeah.
seriously.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Or conditioning or any of those things. At that
Couldn't have
point,
been conditioned at that
you
age by
can't.
at that
Exactly.
point, you know?
Exactly. Like for me, I was extremely aware. So like we know that around the ages of 3 to 4, then that's when you're starting to become aware of your body, your
Sure.
space in the universe, just all this stuff. So for me, I thoroughly remember like so clearly being 4 years old and realizing telling my grandfather, no, we're not different. Like you and I are not different. And, so why are you telling me we're different? And, of course, because you don't have a name for it, you don't understand. It's not until you don't even have shame about it
Mhm. Right.
until the people in your world start
Make it
shutting
shameful.
you down. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's when the shame begins.
Yeah.
And then you begin this long journey of denying that part of yourself,
Mhm.
and the father is right. There's so many mixed. I myself have even like mixed reviews about some stuff, and I think later in our show tonight we're going to be able to touch on some of those issues. But the one thing that we cannot afford to do is villainize children that are just expressing themselves in a way that is natural to them.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, and I think and the question that we're going to get into is how far do you go with it
How
though?
far?
Right.
Exactly.
And so that's
Exactly.
going to be one of the big topics. But I agree with you. I mean, everything, growing up for me, even like I look at, me growing up and everything sexual, like everything sexually
Yes.
related was
Yes.
always like a sin.
Yes.
Of
Yeah.
course, you being in North Carolina, I'm sure it
Oh,
was
yeah. Yeah.
going to hell.
Alabama, North Carolina. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, but yeah, I mean, it was always, like as a child, I mean, also you're very curious,
Very.
about things.
Hmm.
And then
Hmm.
if you're curious about the wrong things, and that becomes a shame, or
Absolutely.
that's wrong, that's bad, you know, but is it? I mean,
Right.
curiosity, more than
Right.
anything. Um,
Absolutely.
I remember when I was in first grade, I have faint memories of this, but I was in first grade and I found my dad's Playboy magazines up in a box, up
Mm.
in the garage or something, somewhere in the garage. And I took it to school. I thought it was the most interesting thing ever. You know what I mean? I'm like showing other kids, I'm like, check
Right.
it out. Of course, that was
Right.
back before it was like full crazy, you know,
Exactly.
it was
Yeah.
just, women's body that,
Right.
mostly
Right.
upper,
Yeah.
body. So,
Absolutely. Not the penthouse jugs mags where
yeah,
it's all.
yeah, exactly. But it was that, I got caught, at the
Hmm.
school. And then, of course, my mom came down and then it was like, so everything was negative about it.
Yeah. So immediately you were wrong,
Yeah.
and the shame begins.
Yep. And,
Yeah.
and I, even at first grade, I was obviously loving a woman's body. I mean,
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Me too, in fact.
yeah,
Me too,
yeah,
in fact.
very, wasn't the same as mine. And I liked it.
No, 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 no. I
Okay.
certainly, I certainly liked the anatomy of the female body, but I also felt like it was completely like different from me. You know what I mean? Like I had no knowledge that eventually my body was going to begin to attack me, and it was going to start growing in ways that was like, oh no, God, wait a minute, what's happening?
Yeah.
But there's a very real notice of attraction. Like even at those ages, you kind of begin to have this sense of what's for you and what's not for you. And then
Mhm.
you're right. As soon as you express that, it's going to be it's shamed, whether you're shamed because you're too young, or
Yep.
whether you're shamed because, oh no, you're not supposed to do that.
Right.
See, it's not our rules at all. It's the imposing imprinting rules of those around us.
Yep. And so much of it with religion.
Oh gosh.
You know,
Controls, what
I
I
mean,
like to
you know,
call
you
it.
being in North Carolina, of course, definitely with religion and stuff. I mean, even in California, though, I mean, it's just, you know, a
Hmm.
lot of it. I mean, more of a liberal state, but
True.
not fully.
Right. Right. Right.
Got a
Right.
lot
Yeah.
of, you know, very conservative, you know, Trump fanatics too. You know, I mean, California will never, like, as a state, vote for Trump, but
Mm.
there's definitely a lot of people that do.
There'll
You
be
know,
some sprinkles. There'll be some sprinkles in there.
yeah. Well, the county that I actually lived a lot of my life in is would be classified as a much more conservative county, Orange County. You
Mm.
know, and so you know you got you know a lot of the cities within Orange County that are definitely much more on the conservative, you know, side.
Wow. Wow.
My parents, you know,
Mm.
I grew up with that. You know, I didn't, but I didn't buy into it though.
Well, and that I think happens to a lot of us, especially I find a lot of us that have gone through like this journey through this addiction are often more creative earlier in a space. And we're often people that question what is being given to us.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, which opens us up for a lot of shaming, not enoughness, you don't belong kind of feelings that come from because when it comes to religion, you don't get to ask any questions. You
No.
start asking questions, and the demons will be exorcised right out of you.
That video was obviously hard to dispute, right?
Mm. Yes,
Um,
yes, yes.
so then the target, right, were arguments about sports participation. Okay,
Gotcha. Yeah.
misinformation about affirming healthcare access, things like that. Okay. And
Mm-hmm.
so there were these attacks that were on transgender youth,
Mm-hmm.
uh, generally, and trans athletes,
Mm-hmm.
and were fueled by, I guess, partly discrimination, not really facts, right?
Right. Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
transgender girls are not new, and they're not taking over girls' sports. You know,
Right.
in fact, transgender youth are
Right.
actually a small part of the overall population in schools,
Very small.
and only about half of trans youth identify as girls.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Opponents don't seem as interested in trans boys, who
Right.
they assume will not be able to compete, right, with
Right.
cisgender boys, which is you know, I guess, a
Yeah.
sexist assumption, right?
Yeah, yes.
So,
Yes.
of the estimated 332 million citizens that live in the United States, 1.3 million adults and 300,000 youth ages 13 to 17 identify as transgender, right?
Wow.
Equally 0.5% and 1.4% of the population, respectively, according to a report that was published by the Williams Institute. Right now,
Mm.
not all transgender people identify as women. An even
Mm-hmm.
smaller number consists of transgender women hoping to compete in girls' and women's sports.
Right.
Right? Now, privacy laws, and I kind of did some research on this, but privacy laws kind of made it tough to identify the exact number of transgender athletes that were
Mm-hmm.
competing in public school sports. But there was a researcher and a medical physicist, Joanna Harper, that estimated the number can't exceed 100 nationwide.
Wow.
So now, while we don't know
Wow.
the exact number of trans women competing in NCAA sports, so basically, it'd be very surprising if there were more than 100 of them in the women's category. So
Mm.
100 transgender athletes would would
Have
comprise
sport.
an incredibly small number of the U.S. population. Number
Absolutely.
dwindles even further when it comes to middle school and high school athletes. So all these laws that are being passed are for about 100 people.
Exactly.
We
And you
spend
can
all this time, right?
and it's not discrimination though. Not discrimination.
No, I mean,
No.
I think about this, like it's in Congress, the House, the Senate, all these states. Think about the amount of time that they're
Jeez.
spending to pass laws for 100 people,
Absolutely.
and many of them not even in their own states,
Right. Right.
right?
Right.
And they're spending all this time focusing on not other things that could be more important,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, like starving children in school because school lunch budgets are being cut left and right in
Absolutely.
states everywhere.
Yep. But let's
Everywhere.
focus on the 100 people.
That's right. Let's focus on these 100 because we can rally some side choosing with this, but and in the whole while that we're doing this trick and pony show over here, we're letting your other kids starve.
Yep.
Like we're it's about the children. We want to protect the children, but fuck them if they starve. If
Yeah,
they're poor, fuck them. Just
absolutely.
fuck them. We're going to
Yep.
cut that budget. We're going to
Yep.
cut that budget. Give ourselves pay raises, and we're
Yep.
going to cut the school lunch budget.
Yep. And
And
focus
people
on
are buying it
and
now.
focus on transgender sports.
Exactly. All 100 of them.
Yeah.
All 100 of them nationwide. We're going to focus in on them.
It's so fun. I mean, it's funny, but it's fucked up when you think
It's
about it. You know what I
fucked,
mean?
man. It's fucked. It's so
Yeah.
fucked. It has to be funny.
Yeah.
And
It's great.
it's what's so funny to me is that people are buying this as if this is a national crisis. You know?
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Who
It's
knew
like
how much
it's like
power
the
we have?
biggest thing and the worst thing in the world, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like who knew we had this much power?
Yeah.
Who knew
Yeah.
that we were this powerful?
Yeah. And so I'm going to show you real quick. This is one of the governors of this country, one of the governors of a state in this country, that is making sure that he focuses on this. And this is the state of Mississippi.
Ooh,
And there he is signing. All the people behind him. None of them are black.
Senate Bill 2536, the Mississippi Fairness Act, is now law. Today, I will be signing Senate Bill 2536, the Mississippi Fairness Act.
Is it fair?
This important piece of legislation will ensure that young girls in Mississippi have a fair, level playing field in public school sports. Now, I never would have envisioned on Inauguration Day 2020 that we would be here this morning. In fact, I never envisioned on Inauguration Day 2021 that we would be here this morning. But for the fact that President Biden, as one of his first initiatives, sat down and signed an executive order which, in my view, encourages transgenderism amongst our young people. But for that fact, we wouldn't be here today.
Okay. Encourages
transgenderism.
Okay. You guys are all need to be transgender. We're going to be having surgeries in a couple of years. We're going to give you some meds. You've got to. You've got to.
You have to. It's the new cool.
Yeah.
Trans is the new cool.
Yeah. That's what it is.
And encouraging. A president is encouraging. Yeah, like it's something you want to run towards. Like your ass is on fire. Right? Right? Probably the thing about it is if this whole trans in sports could help those counties win championships and shit.
Mm-hmm.
Because do you remember way back when we were young, how females fought to play male dominated sports? You remember the first female quarterback? Remember that was a movie that came out, an after school special. What was it? Quarterback Princess. They fought to play with boys sports. What's the difference?
But that's the whole thing that sort of the sexism ideology is that they're not going to be that good. Why are we going to fight something that, so if you want to have a woman on your team, great, go ahead, because all men and we're going to kick your ass.
That's right. That's right. And we're going to make sure that we snuff her out. We're going to get her quick. Yep. But we did that with females wanting to play, boys baseball, all of these things. And there's always somebody against it and this, that, and the other. And yet it won out anyway. And look, just basically look, how many female quarterbacks on a high school football team do we have?
Mm-hmm.
Could we have said in the 80s that we're encouraging women to take over men's sports? I mean, could that have been the argument then?
Yeah.
We're losing it, fellas.
Yeah.
The women are taking over.
Yeah. Which again is this is all political, man. It's like
Absolutely.
I mean, reality is nobody really gives a fuck about this, you know.
They shouldn't. They shouldn't.
But they make it to where, you know, because again, it's all political, you know. So Biden, right? So Biden's order, okay, that he was basically talking about states that heads of federal agencies will have to review their own policies that will deal with Title VII or gender discrimination and consider to revise, suspend, or rescind existing actions or create new ones to fully implement statutes that prohibit discrimination outlined in that particular order. The order does not explicitly address athletics in any great deal, right? The only reference to sports briefly mentioned that, quote, children should be able to learn without worrying about whether they will be denied access to the restroom, to the locker room, or school sports. So transgender athletes who compete at the college and the Olympic levels already are subject to special requirements. If you look at it from a college standpoint. So the National Collegiate Athletic Association, the NCAA, does not require gender confirming surgery or legal recognition of a player's transition sex in order for transgender athletes to participate on a team that matches their identity, right? According to transathlete.com. The NCAA policy on transgender student athlete participation sets separate hormone requirements for trans male and trans female athletes. So a trans female student athlete must complete 1 calendar year of testosterone suppression treatment in order to compete on the women's team. A trans male student athlete who received a medical exception for treatment with testosterone may compete on the men's team, but is no longer eligible to compete on the women's team.
Wow. That's pretty fair.
Yeah, individual colleges, universities, and programs may have their own policies regarding transgender athletes.
But see what that does? Like hormones, like every one of us are a walking hormone, and hormones are at the helm of the majority of everything that happens in our bodies. So when you take an athlete who has now been on testosterone suppression and estrogen or whatever, progesterone, whatever their treatment is for a full year, you know, what's the deal?
They're obviously gonna be a little weaker than before, right?
Yes, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Their strength is going to change. Their strength and their thing's going to change.
Yeah, I'm going to show you video here in a minute, but you've heard of Leah Thomas, right? You hear the story of Leah Thomas?
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to show you real quick now with Tucker Carlson. Now, obviously, this was before he was let go. I
knew he had to make a cameo.
I want to introduce myself. My name is and I am the stuntman for Tucker Carlson. And I'm going to actually be doing his facial expressions. Dangerous. They're very intense. So you may see me come on. Tucker will talk. And then I will jump in to do the dangerous acts.
So college swimming has been in the news, and not simply because it's an interesting athletic contest. Riley Gaines is a college swimmer from Kentucky. She's biologically female. At the women's 200-meter freestyle event at the NCAA Swimming Championships, the NCAA forced Gaines to compete against a biological male called Leah Thomas. You're seeing that race on your screen now. Remarkably, Gaines tied Thomas despite the obvious disadvantage for 5th place. But she says the NCAA has badly mishandled virtually every aspect of this competition. We've been trying for months to get college swimmers on the show to talk about what they think about what's happening. None have accepted except Riley Gaines. We're grateful for that. She joins us now. Riley Gaines, thanks so much for coming on. I'll just let you talk. Tell us what you think of your experience at this event.
Yeah, hi Tucker. Thank you so much for having me and just giving me this opportunity to speak for myself and so many other women athletes out there who, you know, aren't as fortunate as me and have kind of been told they're not allowed to talk about it. And so thank you so much for that. But yeah, like you said, me and Leah just recently tied at the NCAA championships. And honestly, I
For
think the
fifth place.
NCAA handled everything extremely poorly, starting from when we finished and I went behind the podium to collect my fifth place trophy. And, you know, they kind of blatantly told me that Leah would hold the fifth place trophy and that I could pose with the sixth place trophy for photos and would be mailed a fifth place trophy in the mail. So
not only are they allowing a biological male to compete in a women's competition, they're promoting that male over biological females who are competing. That's what I'm reading.
There it is.
Right. And when I kind of questioned it, you know, I asked him, is there a reason why you're giving Leah the trophy? He just explained to me that we're giving it in chronological order. And I questioned him again, you know, what does that mean? We tied. What are we being chronological about? And he kind of blatantly said, we're just going to give the trophy to Leah. We respect and admire your swim, but Leah needs to hold the trophy.
In other words, shut up, don't
I was
ask
baffled,
questions.
really.
Yeah.
Right, I was shocked, and I know all the other swimmers who were standing by and listening to this were also shocked. And I was standing right next to Leah, and she heard it all, and so it was kind of just really baffling that this could happen. And I know the NCAA wasn't prepared for a situation like this, which just tells me when they were faced with it, they protected such a small minority and turned their back on, you know, what the organization in Title IX really stands for.
Well, I mean, they just eliminated what it stands for. It does seem to a non-swimmer who knows that swimming requires a lot of torture, I mean, nothing harder than swimming practice, as you know, this seems like cheating to allow someone with a biological advantage to compete.
There it is.
Exactly. I think there's, you know, a difference between your sex and your gender identity. And so I think that it's just been totally misconstrued and lost, you know, in the past couple years or so. But it's, you know, finally gotten to the point where it's being shown and it's completely violating women and women's rights, especially in sports.
Oh, my God.
So you said a minute ago that you're speaking tonight on behalf of a lot of other female swimmers who've been told not to say a word, just to be quiet and be eliminated. What do they think, if you could speak for them?
Right. I know just solely off talking to tons and tons of NCAA swimmers that their athletic directors or their media people or their coaches or other outside influences have told them, you know, don't say anything, just avoid the situation, you know, save face a little bit. And I'm just fortunate enough to where I have such an amazing support system at the University of Kentucky, whether that be from the athletic director all the way down to my head coach, Lars Jorgensen. But just speaking for them, it's just totally wrong. And I know I can't speak for everyone, but I am almost certain I'm speaking for a large majority of female athletes that this is just not okay and it's not fair. And, you know, we're dealing with something that's completely out of our control when we're racing, you know, biological males, whether that be they have, you know, different lung capacities, they're high, obviously, testosterone levels, whether you be on testosterone blockers or not, it doesn't suppress, you know, going through puberty as a male, especially, you know, the one in question who swam 3 years as a male on UPenn. So it's just completely unfair, and it's a matter of equity, really.
Yeah. I mean, what we're seeing is cheating, and it's remarkable that it takes bravery to point that out, but it does, and you are brave for doing it, and we appreciate it. Riley, thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much.
I'm talking about first place. Can I say that just one more time? I mean, if there was a true advantage, Thomas should have been in first place. I think you're just pissed you got that fifth place trophy, didn't get to fucking stand, and thought, I'm going on Tucker Carlson, I'm celebrating this fifth place. Damn it.
Yeah.
One way or the other. And I'm going to speak for thousands of female swimmers because there's thousands of them.
Yeah. I'll tell you, you know, being his stuntman.
Yeah.
There's a lot of work.
You nailed that, by the way. You nailed it. Nailed it. You nailed that, man.
He's got, you know, I think he's got insurance on his face, you know what I mean? So
he does.
He needs that, you know, he's got to have the stuntman, so that way.
Yeah, for sure. Right. You don't want to overwork that. That's his moneymaker. So, you know,
it was a lot.
Tough. It looked like a lot of work.
Okay. Now this brings up another accusation, okay, regarding her. And I don't know if you had caught wind of this too.
My name is Riley Gaines. I'm a 12-time All-American swimmer from the University of Kentucky. Competing in the women's division of the 2022 NCAA championships, myself and my teammates and competitors around the country were required to compete and share a locker room with Leah Thomas, a biological male who competed on the men's team at University of Pennsylvania as Will Thomas the 3 years prior. In the 200-yard freestyle at the NCAA championships, Thomas and I tied. Despite going the exact same time down to the 100th of a second, the NCAA insisted on giving Thomas the trophy as they explained this was necessary for photo purposes and told me that I had to go home empty-handed. At our national championships, I looked around and wondered why no one was standing up for myself and the other women in the pool and in that locker room. As I talked to my teammates and competitors at the championships, I discovered that the overwhelming majority of the girls shared the extreme discomfort of being forced to strip down in front of a male who was intact with and exposing male genitalia in that same room. After seeing how this affected every girl at that meet, I decided I would stand up and speak out. I put my plans for my future, which included dental school, on hold after graduation and decided to fight for women and girls in sports.
You're saying under this law that a 13-year-old or 14-year-old girl in a locker room has to change and dress and be naked in front of, say, a 16-year-old boy, simply because a 16-year-old boy, who's a biological boy, but inside has a mental condition called gender identity dysphoria and thinks that he's a girl. This is ludicrous and really unreasonable.
If you're the, physically, the opposite sex, what does that look like as far as, is that fair? Is that to be able to say that, okay, yeah, okay, you identify as a transgender, you identify as a woman, your body's a man, right? Should they be allowed to do that?
Well, the one thing I'll take calls with in that one of those videos is the fact that, number one, a 13-year-old and a 16-year-old are changing in the same locker room.
Right.
You know what I mean?
A little extreme, but just extreme. The principles of it, though.
But for the principles, here's how it was for me, and it was so massively uncomfortable for me to change. And at that time, I would have to, I avoided PE, I avoided a lot of sports simply for if I had to dress out, there was true anxiety. So I would make provisions to dress out very privately, even though I shared a lot the same things that were happening. I shared a lot of the same attributes, but I still made great provision because my whole focus was I didn't want to see other developing females. There was this uncomfortableness within myself, even being around people who presented like me. Now, I think when we're talking about complete and different genitalia, it's very hard to make a judgment call on these things, because I think that if you're running through a women's locker room and just swinging the dick around, look who's on here, look at that, there's a whole different scenario.
That's a problem.
That's a problem.
Yeah,
we got a problem with that. But I think for the most part, if a person is truly transgender, which I don't believe it's a mental condition, I wish it were a mental condition. It's not a mental condition. This is a whole different type of situation.
Right.
I think who's most uncomfortable in that situation is the person that identifies as transgender, because you're the only one in there that's going to be different.
Right.
And you could just there's so much give on either side, of what this means. But I believe that the children, the kids, the teenagers that are involved are probably a hell of a lot more accepting and less really worried about some things as the adults in their lives.
Right.
And so when they come home and say, Leah Thomas, we were forced to share a locker room with Leah Thomas, I can almost be feel good about giving a 98% bet that Leah Thomas did everything possible to shield Leah Thomas, and that it wasn't Leah Thomas that was attempting to expose, but it was everybody else who knew Leah Thomas had a different anatomy that had to make sure they saw. Right. So we come to it like that, and who's really at fault? So is Leah Thomas at fault for being Leah Thomas?
And we don't know. I mean, we don't
know. We don't know. Yeah. We don't know. And I do know that there are some transgender human beings that will do that deal where it's kind of a force on, but that's the climate and the culture that we've grown up in, is like, I'll just force this upon you and you've got no choice.
And that's one thing.
That's the problem. That's the problem.
It's kind of back off a little, right?
Right. I think if everybody would back off of this entire subject, and we could just kind of allow people to be who they are and all of that. And man, had I been offered a place to privately change in my youth, I'd have taken it. I think that we just live in this society, man, in this culture that has become so toxic to the point that it's happening on both sides. Yeah. It's happening on both sides.
Well, because the one side will go so extreme,
exactly,
and the other side's going, well, fuck you, and then
exactly,
you go the complete extreme, the other side,
right?
And it's gotten to this point where it's pretty crazy. You know?
Yeah, it's real crazy, and it takes me back to that whole Westboro Baptist Church when we had that interview. Mm-hmm. You know, we talked about, and even she talked about how their signs first were very calm and all of this stuff. And as the energies heightened, I believe that pride almost came about as a big fuck you to the establishment. Yeah. And I'll be grateful when we live in a world where we don't have to have a Pride Month, where we don't have to have pride parades, where we're all just living life, man.
Be proud, just be proud.
Just be proud to be human and here.
Absolutely.
But I think that that's what gives rise to those things. So, you know, when we're talking about especially a subject like this, if you're going to go that extreme, because of course she put off her dental career and all of that stuff, because traveling a speaker circuit pays a hell of a lot more than dental assisting. Right. And so she found her niche. She found her fame, her fortune. I think the concerns were way less than what they turned out to be for the attention that came behind that.
If you both tied fifth place, you should both gotten to fifth place. I don't,
right.
You know what I mean? That doesn't make sense.
Right.
I don't know. Like, did they really tell her that it's because of good photo shoot? I mean, really?
Right. And if they did, it might make sense in this climate as well.
Yeah.
Because then once again we spark a new debate, or we're showing that we're picking a side on the debate, and now we're all in the limelight together.
We're all going crazy.
You know? We're all going crazy together.
We are all going fucking nuts.
We are. It's fucking insane. And I can also see her. I can see some of her argument, but again, we're not arguing about first place. And I'm thinking, if this biological male had such a fucking advantage, would this mug not have come in first?
You'd think so. Yeah.
You would hope so.
Yeah. Now I want to switch gears a little bit, because a lot of this stuff is more like high school, but what about the Olympics? Okay. And so obviously there's we're talking about a different scale here.
History has been made.
This transgender weightlifter competed in the Olympics. Transgender women, people born male but who identify as female, are winning many competitions,
dominating the state's girls' track meets.
Some women are upset about that.
Why do I have to compete against a male body?
Leah Schneeberger is a mountain bike racer. She won this race 3 years in a row. But then a former men's cyclist transitioned and competed as a woman. Now that person wins. But what about combat sports?
Fox taking the knees, and that's it.
Trans woman Fallon Fox won most of her fights. She broke this woman's orbital bone. Later, she said, I've never felt the strength as I did that night.
I can train 20 hours a week, but I cannot train to be a man.
You can't fix some of the performance gaps. The performance gap in weightlifting is over 30%. The performance gap when someone is throwing a baseball is over 50%. And the performance gap when a male punches is 160%.
Veronica Ivy, the trans athlete who won that bike sprint championship, says,
These fears that trans women are a threat to women's sport are irrational fears of trans women, which is the dictionary definition of transphobia.
That's an attempt to shut down conversations, to stop people asking questions.
I just want to be able to compete on a fair playing field, and to watch a transgender female ride away from me like it was nothing and there's nothing I can do about it. It was torture. I really haven't raced since.
The girl that won the race, the bike race, was a male racer, beforehand, and then it becomes, now because like in that aspect, there is going to be some certain probably strength in muscles or things like that they're still going to have.
True. I mean, that's absolutely true. And it doesn't, if I'm, if I can go this far, in looking at that transgender female in that video, there was still a whole lot of male left.
A lot of man.
There was a lot of man left. I think that there should probably be some very serious sanctions on that.
Yeah.
In that we have to make sure. I think if we're going to talk about equality for, all human beings, then we got to talk about equality for all human beings.
Yeah.
All. It can't just be this one-sided debate.
Because the only other thing too, though, the problem, like you look at it is like a runner. Okay. So you could take, now a man is going to be taller, longer legs a lot of times. And it's going to, and no matter how much, hormone suppressant you give that person, that's not going to change. They're not going to get shorter.
Right. And two, and not if they have been training in this sport as a man for however many years. Because by the time you get to the Olympics, you've been training for almost, for a good portion of your lifetime.
Yeah.
And there's going to be significant differences in male training versus female training,
especially like the boxing stuff.
That's where, I take
crazy.
a bit of concern in that area, just because
men are taller, typically longer legs, are gonna, running, definitely. If you've been competing in a sport as a male for a lot of years, and then all of a sudden you transition, you're gonna be stronger.
Right. I mean, like let there be requirements.
Yeah.
Let there be requirements for certain
especially
things,
that level.
In that level of athleticism, that becomes a profession, almost a lifestyle. Let there be some sanctions involved there where we make sure that the playing field is absolutely equal. If people can't pad their clothes to make weight for things, if people can't pad their boxing gloves with metal, I mean, surely we have to make some type of provisions. And I think that the culture that either questions too far or doesn't question enough. I mean, that's what makes us human and growing, is that we are able to question and have conversations. And I think this is a valid conversation to have at that level, man.
Now I want to jump to the puberty blockers. Republicans usually sound absolutely nuts, but there's one Republican that, and we've talked about him before, who sometimes actually does ask good questions. And I'm talking about Rand Paul. Right. We talked about him with the drug stuff because he was really fighting for, helping people, stuff like that. And so Rand Paul is a Republican, I think, who sometimes does speak more rationally.
Sometimes,
with good questions. Right.
Yeah.
Dr. Levine, you have supported both allowing minors to be given hormone blockers to prevent them from going through puberty, as well as surgical destruction of a minor's genitalia. Like surgical mutilation, hormonal interruption of puberty can permanently alter and prevent secondary sexual characteristics. The American College of Pediatricians reports that 80 to 95% of prepubertal children with gender dysphoria will experience resolution by late adolescence if not exposed to medical intervention and social affirmation. Dr. Levine, do you believe that minors are capable of making such a life-changing decision as changing one's sex?
Well, Senator, thank you for your interest in this question. Transgender medicine is a very complex and nuanced field with robust research and standards of care that have been developed. And if I am fortunate enough to be confirmed as the Assistant Secretary of Health, I would look forward to working with you and your office and coming to your office and discussing the particulars of the standards of care for transgender medicine.
The specific question was about minors. Let's be a little more specific since you evaded the question. Do you support the government intervening to override the parent's consent to give a child puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and/or amputation surgery of breasts and genitalia? You have said that you're willing to accelerate the protocols for street kids. I'm alarmed that poor kids with no parents who are homeless and distraught, you would just go through this and allow that to happen to a minor. I would hope that you would have compassion for Kira Bell, who's a 23-year-old girl who was confused with her identity. At 14, she read on the internet about something about transsexual. She thought, well, maybe that's what I am. She ended up getting these puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones. She had her breasts amputated. But here's what ultimately she says now. And this is a very insightful decision from someone who made a mistake but was led to believe this was a good thing by the medical community. I made a brash decision as a teenager, as a lot of teenagers do, trying to find confidence and happiness, except now the rest of my life will be negatively affected, she said, adding that the medicalized gender transitioning was a very temporary, superficial fix for a very complex identity issue. What I'm alarmed at is that you're not willing to say absolutely minors shouldn't be making decisions to amputate their breast or to amputate their genitalia. For most of our history, we have believed that minors don't have full rights and that parents need to be involved. So I'm alarmed that you won't say with certainty that minors should not have the ability to make the decision to take hormones that will affect them for the rest of their life. Will you make a more firm decision on whether or not minors should be involved in these decisions?
Senator, transgender medicine is a very complex and nuanced field, and if confirmed to the position of Assistant Secretary of Health, I would certainly be pleased to come to your office and talk with you and your staff about the standards of care and the complexity of this field.
Let it go into the record that the witness refused to answer the question. The question is a very specific one. Should minors be making these momentous decisions? For most of the history of medicine, we wouldn't let you have a cut sewn up in the ER. But you're willing to let a minor take things that prevent their puberty, and you think they get that back? You give a woman testosterone enough that she grows a beard, you think she's going to go back looking like a woman when you stop the testosterone? You have permanently changed them. Infertility is another problem. None of these drugs have been approved for this. They're all being used off-label.
So that lady was freaking weird, right? That was,
yeah.
She did not even want to touch the question.
No.
But I think she had a great question.
Well, absolutely. I mean, we can't, again, this goes to fueling the fucking discrimination fire when people like that have the opportunity to speak about something and then they just don't.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way, because he has a really good point. You as a minor can't go to the hospital and be sewn up unless your life's in danger before your parents get there to be a part of it.
Yep.
You know, like there is a real necessity and need for parents to be involved. I mean, listen, for me, I was so aware and so sure, and and when I wanted a haircut, when I didn't know that there was a word called transgender. I didn't even know that's what happened. I thought I was some kind of mistake. But, you know, there's a lot of gender affirming care that we can do that does not have a permanent anything attached to it. And listen, I'm not saying I'm against puberty blockers, but I am absolutely saying that making a permanent surgical decision in the ages where you are discovering who you are in so many different areas, especially in today's climate where, you know, it is 24/7 all the time with the internet, that people are so looking for something to identify with because we've lost sight of what we truly are on the inside. So I'm saying all that to say that it is very much needs to be a very strict case by case basis, but there is gender affirming care that can be done, that can help someone through some mental health issues. Because listen, it's very, very serious to feel trapped and imprisoned by your own body. So to have an open dialogue, to have, you know, healthcare, I mean, mental health care professionals involved drastically, they need to be involved far more than maybe the healthcare system, simply because you got to be able to help somebody work some of this stuff out. Not that they need to be involved to decide who can do what. But if we're taking off the genitalia or body parts of minors, we're wrong.
Yeah. And I don't think that's really happening much, right?
It can't be. If I, as an adult, had to have at least 2 mental health professionals' signatures and a doctor's assessment of me, this took a whole almost year before I even began being able to start hormone replacement therapy. And I was I was over 40. You know, I can't imagine that it is happening that easily for children. And I think that people get confused when we talk about gender affirming care. They automatically think of medications, blockers, and surgeries, when gender affirming care can be as simple as a haircut, a change in a pronoun, a calling someone a different name, a different wardrobe. And so when certain states and Republicans and politicians start banning gender affirming care, they're not just banning medications, they're banning everything.
Yeah, therapy and all that stuff, right?
Everything. I mean, everything.
I'm going to show you a video real quick of a woman, or you know, who transitioned, realized that it was a mistake, and had a lot of things done very quickly. Like there wasn't any great care that was done, and so went back to being a woman.
I was born biologically female. I began transitioning and taking hormones when I was 18 years old. Growing up, I couldn't pinpoint what my issues were, and then I realized that it might be a gender issue. When I turned 18, I did go to Planned Parenthood. I just stated that I had gender dysphoria, and they gave me testosterone a week later. Before I went on hormone therapy, I wasn't required to see any therapist or any sort of a doctor at all. So about 1.5 years after I was on hormones, I decided to see a therapist about getting approval for top surgery. I walked in on one appointment for half an hour, and then she emailed my insurance for approval, just like that. Even at this point, when I was passing as a man, I still had these doubts in the back of my mind that said, what if you're wrong? What if you made a mistake? In the end, I decided not to do the surgery. At that point that I decided to detransition and live my life as a woman again. Even as an adult, it took me a long time to figure out who I was and who I wanted to be. Kids especially need to see a therapist before making any sort of permanent medical decisions, like going on hormone blockers and surgeries especially. I mean, they don't even know what they want for dinner the next day, let alone what gender they are. The biggest mistake that I made was that I did not get the right amount of therapy or medical advice needed. These days, if you tell a parent if their child thinks that they might be transgender or has gender dysphoria, to wait and really consider it and maybe seek other therapy, you're just seen as transphobic now because you're not accepting people. I'm not anti-trans at all. I support the trans community very much, but I also support medical responsibility.
I mean, I agree with that. I mean, there needs to be, And I guess the part of vilifying the trans community is, and not the medical community. Well, we've seen that in the addiction field. You know, when we talk about opioid epidemics, we vilify the addict versus the community that began a whole lot of
the doctors prescribing, over prescribing.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
They always seem to be shielded. And, you know, I guess I have to believe that the person that said they went somewhere and got testosterone a week later. But
it seems a little crazy, but
it does. It does. It really, really does. Because, you know, my state's politics didn't have anything to do with it. It was, these are the requirements. And I don't know if they've laxed some of the requirements at this point with all the stuff going on. But I think I like that video. I mean, I like that person's point of view, because if you're questioning, let me put this out there in case there's any young trans people or trans people that watch this. If you're still questioning whether you're doing the wrong thing,
then wait.
Just wait.
Yeah.
And if you are expecting that getting some type of medication or surgery is going to complete you and make you happy, then reconsider, because I promise you, the majority of people that transition, they go all in and they want everything done quick because that's their path to happiness. And there is a real need for you to get happy in here and here before you actually step into doing anything else. There is a certain level of self-acceptance that you need to get to. If you identify as a transgender person, there's some acceptance that has to be gone through with that.
Yep.
You know, there's some healing that needs to happen within you on every level, not just surgery. Not just surgery. I still see a therapist. We don't talk about transgender issues per se. We talk about like me. Like I'm working through a lot of things in a lot of ways. And so I knew when I stepped into, you know, going through transition and all of that, I wouldn't have wanted to do it in my 20s, even though I thought I did.
Right.
I didn't want to do it in my 20s. I'm glad that I waited. There's a level of self-acceptance and a real expectation of what all this means as a person that went through and lived the life that I did.
Yeah. Now, puberty blockers, right? I want to talk about that for a second. So puberty blockers obviously are used to delay the changes of puberty in transgender and gender diverse youth who have started puberty, right? And so, you know, when taken regularly, these analogs stop the body from making your sex hormones, which of course includes testosterone and estrogen. And so in people that are assigned male at birth, these analogs slow the growth of facial and body hair. They prevent voice deepening and limit the growth of the penis, the scrotum, and the testicles. Right. So in people that are assigned female at birth, this treatment limits or stops breast development and stops menstruation. Gender identity, you know, of course, is the internal sense of being male, female, neither, of course, say neither, or some combination of both, right?
Yeah.
It gets more confusing as time goes.
It does.
Gender dysphoria, of course, is a feeling of distress that can happen when gender identity differs from your sex. Now, you were kind of talking about too, and I was thinking about it though, is that like, you know, like our human brains are not, they always say developed until the age of 24, maybe to 28. And, you know, how would anybody make that decision, you know, prior to that? And that's why I'm kind of on board with you. But now the difference being though, and this is what I was thinking about, was that if, you know, we've talked before about it's easier for females to go to males versus males to go to females, right?
Yeah.
Now, the difference, though, and this is where I was thinking about this in terms of these puberty blockers, that would actually, if it was legit, but how do you know? Of course, you're having to do it too young, right?
Right.
If it was legit, then you're going to be in great shape if you're a male going to a female, because you'll actually look more
right. Absolutely. Without a doubt. And I think that a lot of true, like, transgender people, a lot who, like me, who I didn't know as a young person that I was born intersex, so I didn't find that out until I was grown and ended up having an exploratory surgery. And we open up this person, and there's one ovary, there's one internal testy. And so my body had been fighting each other.
So internally, you're both.
Right. But because my genitalia did not present, there was no reason for, doctors to say, we got a problem here. And so I was always naturally masculine. And so when my body would so I started kind of developing late. So female things started coming very late for me. They didn't come early, they came late.
Because you had more testosterone than probably.
Right. My body was like balancing this thing out. So I was almost kind of developing into two people at once. And so it was very confusing. And I think there's got to be some type of, when we generalize it, somebody's going to get hurt and somebody's going to have it great. But we can't really generalize people. So when we're talking about, I think there should be more testing.
Have they ever done studies, though, as far as do these individuals have more, just naturally, right, have more estrogen, or the other side more testosterone? And I'm wondering, if you could do tests like that. I mean, it's not going to tell you completely, but at least it could give you a little insight, maybe.
It really could give you some insight. I mean, the very day that I walked into my doctor's office and, found out that she was actually specialized in gender affirming care, even though I was in a regular general doctor's office, I asked that same question that day. And she was very quick, to say, well, there's nothing wrong with you. And I was like, that's not what I'm saying.
Right.
I'm saying, I'm wondering if there is some way that we could develop another way to be able to help people go through this.
Yeah.
I think we generalize just throwing people on puberty blockers. There are people that are going to get hurt and people that are going to get helped. Why can't we develop this? I think that if this was anything more, if this was truly not just a political battle and a way to make some type of argument or create some type of division, I think our medical community could find a lot more study in transgender individuals and help them more, by helping them learn themselves. Helping them learn themselves, because there's a great difference I've learned throughout my journey between someone who's intersexed and someone who is just identifies as transgender. That's two different situations. It really, really is two different situations. But I have to put myself in a category of being transgender, and people then just make their own assumptions versus
but you're
being
half male.
I am. I'm half male. I got the best of both worlds, man. I'm a gift. I'm a gift.
Yeah. Puberty blockers versus obviously testosterone or estrogen. Puberty blockers are reversible, right?
Right.
So but all they're basically doing is just pausing, putting your puberty on pause.
On pause. And I think there could be a limit to that as well. I think that there could be a certain age that if we're going to start that, we start that. And I think that parents and kids and all of that should be so made aware of the possible side effects, as with everything. There's going to be possible side effects. When you start messing with the internal workings of the body, there are going to be possible side effects. So I think that's where we got to have parents. We've got to have parents in this mix to really try to help children go through this.
Absolutely.
And help them decide if the risk is worth the reward or what could possibly happen. We don't have to judge people to be responsible parents for our child, because every child's different.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think that politicians should be making decisions for people's children. I don't think that, outside forces should make decisions for people's children. I think people got to know their own children.
Politicians like to pick and choose what they
right.
want the parents to be allowed to do.
Right.
Ridiculous.
Parents
Parents can't make decisions on this. They have to make decisions on this. Maybe they make decisions on, you know what I mean?
Exactly. They're held responsible for this,
Yeah.
but not, they can't do this.
That's
like, come on. And I'm not saying all parents are good parents and it's the answer to everything, but I just think that children actually being out there making lifelong decisions, we don't allow them to do other things. We don't allow them to buy alcohol. We don't allow them to smoke cigarettes because they'll stunt their growth.
So 2023, right, has been a record year for anti-LGBTQ bills introduced in state legislatures. There are 130 bills specifically targeting access to trans health care that were introduced this year. 18 have been enacted according to the ACLU. So there are currently 8 transgender representatives elected to 7 state legislatures. That's 0.1% of all state legislatures, according to the LGBTQ Victory Institute. Transgender adults, again, make up 0.5% of the U.S. population. Right?
0.5. Fifth place.
Very small, right? Remember, we're making bills for 100 people.
100 people. Wow.
Yep. Now,
man, that's a lot of resources for 100 people.
100%. Yeah. That's what we do. We just love to spend a lot of time focusing on shit that's got nothing to do with nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of working on shit that matters.
Yeah. That matters. This is the old ways of power being shaken out so that we can make change, and yet they're grasping on to things that have worked in the past. So we're going to start attacking women and abortions. We're going to do all the old stuff because we ain't got no new tricks in this pony. So,
well, I'm going to show you a quick video real quick too of one of our state governors who has just LGBTQ on his brain all the fucking time. And so he obviously thinks a lot about it.
What we've said in Florida is we are going to remain a refuge of sanity and a citadel of normalcy. And kids should have an upbringing that reflects that.
Among the new laws signed, SB 254, which restricts gender-affirming care, the medical intervention when an individual's gender identity is different than the one assigned at birth. The bill prevents the procedures on minors as well as puberty blockers, and also requires physicians who administer the procedure to adults to be physically present when doing so. The second bill, HB 1069, is an extension of the parental rights in education law, dubbed by critics as the Don't Say Gay law. This prohibits a school from requiring students and teachers to use pronouns not based on biological sex. It also adds guidelines for books that citizens wish to challenge in schools.
We never did this through all of human history until 2 weeks ago. Now this is something. They're having third graders declare pronouns. We're not doing the pronoun Olympics in Florida. It's not happening here.
The third bill, HB 1438, prohibits a person from knowingly admitting a child to an adult live performance and establishes punishments for people or establishments who do. As described in the text, an adult live performance is, quote, a presentation that depicts or simulates nudity, sexual conduct, or specific sexual activities. The final 2 bills of the day, HB 1251 and 225. The former requires state-run buildings and schools with a restroom, locker room, or changing facility to have separate facilities for men and women based on the sex assigned at birth, while the latter preserves the right for public prayer before high school sporting events, gives high school athletes more options in choosing where they want to play, and also reshapes the board of the Florida High School Athletic Association.
We'll protect kids even when you take some incoming as a result of maybe offending some ideologies or some agendas out there, but that's fine. We're happy to do that.
You got Ron DeSantis.
I just want to make sure there is not one abused child in DeSantis's state. I want to make sure that there is not one child that is going through an abusive foster care situation. I want to make sure one child does not go hungry in that state.
We don't care about that.
We don't. That's right.
All we
That's
care
right.
about is the transgender.
Yeah,
stuff.
we're not using pronouns. We're not changing shit in Florida.
Of the 450 transgender kids in Florida, that's what we care most about.
That's what we care the most about.
Not the thousands that are hungry, but
exactly. Not the thousands that are living in sheer poverty where they don't have a place to lay their head.
But it's about that one kid that wants to play softball with the females. You know what I mean?
Just that one. That dadgum one. We're gonna spend a lot of time fucking up this one.
Yeah.
Man, it's
crazy.
It's crazy right now. It's scary. It's so mixed, like there's so many different ways to look at things. Trans kids, they exist. But I think that everybody deserves. And if we're talking about, I like the wording that children can't be admitted into any adult performance, which basically he's talking about a drag show. But if we're going to make that means they can't go to plays. They're not to be admitted even with their parents to movies that are PG-13 or R. Come on. So are we policing the movie theaters? Are we policing all that? Or are we just policing the drag shows?
We need to send a whole lot of like heterosexual, just straight men and have them all dress up as women and walk around Florida.
Absolutely. Without a doubt. It would be. It would be. It would be. Gosh, man.
So I want to show you now. I want to kind of end this thing with a very fucked up, sad scenario about Texas.
We first met Kai when she was just 5 years old, living in a conservative suburb of Houston.
When Mom thought I was a boy and dressed me like a boy, I did not like it. I already thought she knew I was a girl, but she didn't know, so I had to tell her when I was old enough to say it.
For nearly 2 years, Kai's mom, Kimberly Shapley, fought their local school board so that Kai could use the girls' bathroom.
The suicide rate for a transgender youth is 41%. That is why we are fighting so adamantly for these children.
Kimberly lost that battle. And in 2018, she moved her family to Austin, where she hoped Kai would be safe. But in late February 2022, following an opinion by Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, Governor Greg Abbott ordered the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services, or DFPS, to investigate parents who support their trans kids' gender-affirming care for, quote, child abuse. The concern is that these children could be separated from their parents.
When the governor came out with the order a few days ago, what was your experience sort of seeing that?
Initially, just texting with other moms just to literally and calling just to cry with each other. And then the text messages started coming. CPS called me today. And your heart drops. And you're just, this can't be happening. You're totally numb and this can't be happening. And then, the next text message comes and you're like, oh my God, this is literally happening. I did talk to her about if CPS were to show up at school, just get on her Instagram and go live and keep her phone on. And I told her the ways that I would be able to track her, and that I would come get her. Make no mistake, I will come get you.
Within 48 hours of Abbott's directive, 5 Texas district attorneys declared their offices wouldn't pursue cases against parents of trans kids. And even some of those tasked with enforcing the directive disagree with it. One DFPS investigator agreed to speak with us anonymously.
Do parents have to answer the phone, answer the door, talk to an agent like you?
No. They can say no. They don't have to sign releases. They don't have to let us in their home. I don't think the average person knows that.
You are risking your job by talking to us. Why is it that important to do this interview?
I know that these children are in great homes. I know they're not being physically abused. The first time I've ever talked to a reporter, that the reporter was crying. Excuse me, my apologies. My apologies. Made the comment that the family was impeccable, and then the only reason was that the person is a mandated reporter.
This isn't a bigot. It's not a hateful person. It's not someone who's anti-trans. It's someone who just felt like they had to do this or they would lose their job.
This is very dramatic, and forgive me, but the only thing I could think of was Nazi Germany, that you had to turn in your neighbors. It's insanity to me with all the problems going on. This is what we're dealing with. I have to call all of these wonderful people out to protect kids, and that's what we do for a living. That's literally in the interviews, ma'am. That's what we tell them, is that to get them kind of a trust factor. It's like, my whole job is to protect you. That's all I do. And in these cases, I can't tell them that.
What do you fear about this order?
My fear is that these children will be taken back to where we were 30 years ago, because those people that do believe in this, who have power, are using that power for political reasons, not safety. And I can't imagine that we would tell these parents not to protect their children.
If you're in Texas,
Get
get the fuck out.
Get out. Get out.
Seriously. That's crazy.
It is, man.
I mean, I like the way he kind of pointed out too. It was like Nazi Germany. You got to like turn in your neighbor, you know?
Yeah. I mean, you have a family. I mean, what Kai Shipley is young. Like, the only gender affirming care that's happening is to be able to dress and be called the name that you want to be called.
Mm-hmm.
What medical malpractice by, because the opposite is we create a child who is more likely to attempt to commit suicide or commit suicide.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what are we talking about here? Like, this is really where we are. And I think we've all come out of this global lockdown with trauma that we don't understand, and we're looking for something to put our attention on so we don't have to deal with our own shit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hurting people.
Yeah.
The bottom line is, it's hurting people. This can kill people. Suicide attempts that happened in my life just because of the sheer fact of feeling so isolated, so alone, so not understanding what was happening to me, feeling like I was God's little joke and a mistake, and all of that lent itself to a life where I ran so desperately from myself that I had to keep myself numb through drugs and alcohol. I participated in activities just hoping one of them would take me out. I attempted suicide more than 4 times, and I spent time in conversion therapy and time in all these ways trying to make myself fit in this mold. And it just doesn't happen, and people die because of that. Now, there are some responsible things that we can do to try to help children that are going through this, and children who aren't, to become more inclusive and just accepting that we're all on a journey, man. But when we're talking about politicians and laws, like, if you're still stupid enough to believe this has anything to do with anything other than power and corruption,
Mm-hmm.
well, then, you need more help than you know.
If anybody out there is listening that is struggling yourself, you can always contact one of us. What's your email?
My email is transgendermentor at gmail.com. That's a good place. And also, oh gosh, there are so many different organizations that are for trans youth. The Trevor Project is an amazing resource for trans youth and parents. The Trevor Project is probably, I love the Trevor Project, but there's a lot of different resources that you can reach out to, and the Trevor Project is just a beautiful one, where they have a hotline, they have a text line, that you can go and get support. Because my biggest thing is, if you feel like that you may be transgender, find support for that. Don't find indoctrination. Don't find, whatever. Find support for you.
Yeah, that's the point. Remember that, you don't have to do this alone.
Right.
Everything,
Absolutely.
any problem that you have out there, somebody's already gone through it.
Absolutely.
If
Without a doubt.
If it is completely unique, then let us know. We'd love to hear
Absolutely.
that.
Absolutely. Without a doubt. And be careful of making permanent decisions for, situations that aren't going to end up being permanent. There's a way. There's a way.
Yeah, my email is recoveryecosystem@gmail.com or mccoy@highwallclean.org. So if anybody wants to reach out to me, you can do that. Do you got anything else, Lona, on this topic? I mean, we kind of touched on a lot of stuff.
We did, and I appreciate that. Just that each human being, if we remember, is going through their own journey. That means transgender people and regular people. And I think in saying what I just said, for people not to suffer alone, I also want to say to the transgender community, let us stop being a part of the problem and start being the change that we want to see. Let us have open dialogues of conversation, help people understand more about what it is like to live in your world, versus just shutting people down, canceling people because they are have their own opinions or their own perspectives. I mean, we can't walk through the world pointing fingers at people and calling them wrong and then expecting that that's somehow going to help this whole situation. We have to be open and willing to be the change that we want to see. And so, I say to both sides, let's just listen. Let's just talk, listen to each other.
Yeah.
We're humans.
Yep. And let's stop caring so much about what other people think about us.
Amen to that, brother.
Yeah.
Amen to that. You're never going to have the approval of all the people all the time. It's never going to happen.
It's one of my favorite things I tell the clients I work with is, let's stop giving a fuck what people think about us.
Come on. Absolutely. Absolutely. And remember, where energy goes, where your attention goes, energy flows. So if you keep yourself focused on all the shit that's going on in the world right now against transgender people, you're causing yourself a whole lot of anxiety about something that may or may not happen. Like, put your attention on you and what's healthy for you.
Absolutely. Well, hey, I want to thank you, Lona, for letting me walk with you.
I appreciate the walk, brother.
Yeah,
I appreciate it. Yeah,
and I think I understand the walk. I think I understand. I got the shoes. I got the shoes.
I hope so. I hope so. They're pumps, aren't they?
Yeah.
3-inch
Absolutely.
pumps.
All right. Well, hey, I want to thank everybody for walking with us. Thank everybody for tuning in again to another episode of Walk a Mile in My Shoes. Thank you, Lona, again.
Absolutely. Thank you, man. And make sure you do all the things. Please like, subscribe, share the video out, and comment. Make sure that you comment below and help us get on this algorithm, help us grow this channel so that we can have the opportunity to take more walks in many different shoes. And if you have a show idea, make sure you leave it in the comments. We'll be sure to touch on that as well.
Yeah, let us know your shoes.
Yes. Give us the size, shape, and everything.
Yes.
Let us walk them.
All right. Well, we'll see you next time. Thanks.
All right.